Welcome back once again to another one of our behavior talks. Today's broadcast is a subject that I love talking about because I think I'm very, very good at it. That is managing protest behaviors. What we're going to really talk about is what are good techniques for you to develop when you're working with kids that protest? They cry, they scream, they try to run away, they fall to the ground. They do all of these kind of behaviors that make it very, very challenging to work with them. We're going to endeavor to try and show you the correct techniques associated with handling it. We'll show you the incorrect techniques, and hopefully you'll gain some better understanding of how to be effective at dealing with these situations. These concepts, I think, are pretty easy to understand, but we all know understanding something and being able to implement it well are two very, very different events. The video I prepared was one of our clients that we worked with, and he was already around 5 when we started with him, and he had already been given some ABA services by 2 other companies prior to us starting with him. The video is his very, very first session with us. All we wanted him to do was sit nicely, and it resulted in a very long protest. The very first day, we actually had a lot of practice for staff on how to be really good about managing these type of behaviors that this child exhibited. I really like working with kids that have behaviors, and generally most of my staff do, because we find them challenging but very, very rewarding. When we had this the very first day, I was like, yes, we have a behavior case, because that's going to allow my staff to really develop and hone their skills. Unfortunately for us, but fortunately for the child, he learned very quickly. And in less than a week or so, he stopped engaging in all of these protest behaviors. The problem is that because my staff didn't have a long time in terms of practicing these type of behaviors, you forward 6 months later, and then for whatever reason, we start to see some of these type of protests start to creep back in. We were fortunate that we had video of 6 months later, and then a video from the very first day of treatment. And there was a very, very stark difference between the two. And when we watched it, we could tell right away what was happening, which is all the techniques that we had taught the staff right at the very first day, they implemented, and they got the behaviors to go away. They went away so quickly that the staff started to lose that skill set, so that when you take a look at 6 months later, they're doing everything that we told them not to do. Hopefully I haven't hyped the video up too much, and it's not a disappointment for everybody when they actually get to see it later. Before we get to the video, we're going to just talk about the general concepts in terms of how, what are good protest management techniques and what are bad management techniques. In almost everything that we do, we stress good technique with everything that we teach a child, okay? We stress it from, body posture to finger movements. Like we're very, very precise about the techniques that we want our staff to learn and teach our kids. When we talk about good technique, then we're talking about how we can effectively manage these behaviors in a way that's going to maximize the child's gains. Our philosophy really is that we think the child's abilities are inhibited by all of the behaviors that they demonstrate, from aggression to self-injury to all of the protest behaviors like screaming, yelling, crying. All of that stuff inhibit and prohibit them from being who they can possibly be. We think that when you are really, really good at the behavior management piece and can really neutralize, get rid of all of these problematic behaviors that interfere with their learning, we think then the child's able to learn at their capability. The problem is if you try to ignore it and you just try like, oh, you know what, let me just try to teach the child skills, okay? What you'll find is that every time you call the child over to teach them anything, and it doesn't matter what it is that you're trying to teach them, they will fight you on that skill set you're trying to teach them every single time. If you never get good control over the child's behaviors, the child's learning is going to be hindered. Their ability to take new information in and utilize it and use it in their everyday lives is going to be hampered because of all the behaviors. Here are the core concepts when you are dealing with these protest behaviors. Number one on that list is to minimize the physical contact you have with the child. In some of our previous videos, we really talked about how kids love attention, right? And the amount of attention that they get. And there's no attention like physical attention, okay? And the more physical you are with them, the more enjoyment they derive from it, even though they're protesting and even though it looks like they don't like it, it ends up reinforcing them the more sustained, strong physical contact you have with the child when they are protesting. You're also going to try to avoid using force and power as the main way to get the child to do something. So if the child's pushing this direction, you don't want to be pushing in the opposite direction of the child. That's force versus force, and that's something that we want to absolutely avoid. When you're helping the child, especially with physical assistance, you want to go in and out with the prompting, in and out with the prompting, in and out with the prompting. And then you also want to make sure that you fight one battle at a time rather than fight multiple battles across different areas. The goal when you're actually working with the child is to minimize how much energy you're using when you're interacting with them when they're protesting, and maximize how much energy they're using when they're protesting. Because what you want to do is when they're protesting, you want them to use up all the energy that they have. You want that fire blazing hot. I've worked with a lot of kids, okay? And their energy is almost limitless, So even when you're doing things the right way, sometimes the kids can last an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. They have a ton of energy. So to get the protest over and done with in the shortest amount of time, you have to make sure that that fire is burning as much fuel as possible so that we come to the end of that protest sooner. Now, at the same time, when you work with kids, it can get tiring when they're protesting. So you have to be really smart about when you're going to use your energy and not waste it physically engaging with the child over a long period of time. Why? Because you're going to tire out a lot sooner than the child's going to tire out. Save your energy and do your best to make sure that the child is wasting a lot of theirs. Now, the thing is that when the child is using a lot of the energy, okay, and what I mean by that is like there's a point in time in a protest when the child is going up. So they might start with whining, and then they'll cry, and then they'll scream, and the protest gets higher and higher. There's a point where they reach where they're no longer there with you. They're just protesting at a high level, and that's the level you want them at, which is they don't feel any amount of escape from the task by when they're expending so much energy. That's what you want to try to do, is push them into that area, meaning like, okay, I'm going to follow through. I'm going to get you to listen to me until you protest at a level where I can't control you anymore. Like, oh, okay, like, oh, trying to engage with you, you've already crossed that line over, in which case I'll back off, but I'm not going to back off fully. I'm going to just back off enough so that you can feel my presence there, and you're still like, oh, flailing away, wasting energy. Because guess what? Your kids know it when you're close and when you're a little bit too far away. When you're too far away, then they sit back and they can rest, and they can, okay, I'll conserve my energy too. So you have to stay close enough where they're still highly protesting, but you're not touching them, you're not engaged with them, you're allowing them to waste all of their energy. All right. Now, during any protest, the energy goes up, the energy goes down, the energy goes up, and it fluctuates like that. And so when the child's like, oh, at the height of their protest, like I said, you back off, you let them protest, but then you can start to see they get over the height of it and start to come down a little bit. So on the way down, you have to come back in with your demands. You have to come back in with what you ask the child to do. And if they re-escalate, that's fine. You back away again and you let them expend that energy. One of the things that most people do wrong on the technique side when they're working with kids is they'll bend over to try to pick the child up from the floor. So literally they'll go and they'll be standing and they'll be bending over to try to pick the child up, okay? And what happens is that you put your back at risk, and if you've never had any kind of bad back experience, like, dude, once you hurt your back, you can't do anything, okay? And so that's one of the things is learning good technique associated with picking the child up. What that means is hands underneath the armpits, okay? You go into a kneeling position, and then you lift with your legs going up and not trying to just use your back and arm strength to get them up. Now, we're gonna go over a little bit about things that you're going to see in the video, and I'll point that out as we're watching the video itself as well. He tries to fight too many battles at the same time, okay? And what we're going to see is that the child's protesting, and he's going to try to get the child up and over to the chair at the exact same time, okay? Rather than, I'm going to get you up once you're standing, then I'll get you over to the chair. You'll also see he'll try to bend over and try to pick the child up. All right, now, this is something that guys have a bigger tendency with than girls do. Guys tend to take more aggressive actions and aggressive stances, okay? So when he's working with this child that's already protesting, he does what I call instigatory types of interactions with the child. When the therapist sits right in front of the child, they are sitting right in front of the child's face, almost kind of daring them to do something. Their movements in terms of handling the child are not purposeful. They are quick, they are sudden, and what it results in is a more of a inflammatory type of response. One of the biggest things you'll see is there's a lot of physical contact made between the therapist and the child. All right, now, before I show this video, a couple things, I removed the sound from it all, so if I had the sound on, you would hear nothing but crying throughout all the video. I also didn't want to get the stream booted for some reason, so I figured that was something that might get us booted. So that's why I also removed the sound. Unfortunately, it's a lot less dramatic without the sound. All right. So one of the things I want to highlight is how good this child is at protesting. He knows how to twist that foot. So you see here, he's actually just hooking the therapist's leg with his foot to make it more difficult for the therapist to move him over to the chair. So we'll watch it again here. Look at that, expert. And you can see it down below as well, is when he tries to get him, he just twists his foot just enough and contorts his body just enough to make it really hard for the therapist to get him in the chair. All right, now this is the aggressive stance I was talking about, which is he's standing right in front of the child, right on top of him, almost daring the child to do something. All right, so I'm going to step in at this point to show everybody how to do some things. So my first thing is I get comfortable right away. So I bring him over to the couch so I'm comfortable. So here, I'm going in and out with my prompting technique. I want him to stand up. That's all I care about. I don't even worry about the chair right now. I just want him standing. So I'm going to go in and out with my physical assistance. In, out, in, and out again. In and out. Okay. So here again, all I care about is getting him standing on his own. Okay, so you can see there, I got him standing. Now I'm going to get you over to the chair. And what I'm doing is I'm guiding the child over to the chair. I'm not shoving them. I'm not forcing it. I'm just gently guiding them into the chair. So he tries to run away from me. I stop him. So as soon as I get him corralled, I get him back up, and then I get him over to the chair. So this is the thing with elopement, you know, trying to run away, trying to escape. You cannot let them escape. The further they get away from you, the more reinforcement they get from trying to run away. And so what happened here is that he tried to run away and he failed to run away. Okay? And every single time that he tries to run away and he fails to run away, he learned something very important, which is I cannot run away. That's why, like, oh, even for kids like that try to run out of rooms and things like that, we don't practice closing the door or keeping the door locked or anything like that. For us, we want the door wide open and we want them to try to leave, and then we stop them, okay? Because what happens is that if you just close the door, they just learn like, oh, it's gonna be hard for me to leave right now, not impossible. And on top of it, I just can't right now, as opposed to I'm learning not to do it. Right? So this is a training, so I'm training everybody what to do. So now this is an example of using aggressive movements, right? Like guys tend to do those kind of things, okay? So you saw, oh, when I got him to the chair, I was guiding him in the chair. Here, the therapist is moving him quickly into the chair, not under control. All right. Now the therapist is going to struggle a little bit here until he gets down to the ground. Now again, I slow mode this part of it to show you just how good the child is at contorting their body to make it hard for the therapist to pick them up. Look at all this kid is really good at what he does. You can see he just does little movements here or there, contorts his body here or there, moves his legs and moves his feet in a way that just makes it challenging for the therapist to actually get him up. But once he gets on the ground, he's up. Okay. Now, the thing is, kids can read us all the time. So they know when you're sure of yourself and they know when you're not sure of yourself. And this child knows this therapist, you don't know what you're doing. All right. You don't know what you're doing. And so he manipulates that. He makes it harder for the therapist to do something because of that lack of confidence in the therapist. So the therapist got him standing, but the therapist doesn't know how to get him effectively over to the chair, and the child knows it. All right. So you can see like, come on, get into the chair, get into the chair. Okay. Not very purposeful. Here, just guiding to the chair. Okay, the child doesn't want to do it. I just guide him into the chair. There's no lack of confidence. There's no lack of like surety when I guided him into the chair. Okay, so now what you'll see is the protest is going to escalate up a little bit. Okay, and here the child knows this therapist is going to catch them. They know it, so they lean more because they know, oh, you're gonna be there for me. Leaning into it. All right, but you can slowly see therapist technique is improving little by little. All right, look at how good this child's movements are. Just enough to wiggle out of the therapist's grasp. Hook. Yeah, and this one, great hook on the child's part. Hooks another therapist's leg to make it more difficult for this other therapist to pick him up. Squirm out, okay? And then flips out again. And hooks. All right, so this is something you want to absolutely avoid, okay, which is pulling the child by their arms, just because when you're doing that, you could just accidentally pull too hard, and you might hurt the child. All right, so here the protest is going to re-escalate some. Now, the thing is, the therapist asked me a question there. And I position the child beneath me, so I'm not even touching the child. I move them, so I made sure to have no actual physical contact with the child while I'm answering this therapist question. Right? Underneath the arms, trying to get him standing again. And get him in the chair as quickly as possible without any struggle. Now, this is how good this kid is, right? You see, I'm taking stuff out of his hands because when he was on the floor, he grabbed some toys. So he has the toys in his hands. All right, so the protest is gonna get a little bit higher with me. So I'm going to have to readjust, so he's going to fight it a little bit more. So I have to go back to the in and out prompting procedure. All right. So here is another example of him trying to run away from me. And this time he's going to try to do it 3 times. And every single time he's going to fail, which means he's going to learn I cannot run away with this guy. He runs away. I stop him. And then I let go. He runs away. I stop him. And then I let him go. He tries to lean on me. I'm not going to let him lean on me. That was our technique video about how to handle protest behaviors. And like I said, this child is really good about contorting his body, using his foot this way, doing all these small little things that make it extremely challenging to get him in the chair. Now, so obviously we showed one kid's video, right? And a lot of kids exhibit a wide range of different types of behaviors. So this is just to give you a rough idea of how we would go about it with one specific kid. Right. Now, I can't do too many of these, especially back to back to back, because it just takes way too much time, right? Okay, so maybe in another month, I can use another video. I can do all of the hiding of the faces and whatnot to highlight different kids and different situations and different behaviors. Thanks everybody for taking time out of your day to sit in on our stream. We really appreciate it. If you like what we do, please hit the like button. If you really enjoy it, please subscribe. And any kind of comments that you have, feel free to comment away. Hopefully we'll see everybody again next week, and have a great rest of the weekend. Bye-bye.